You're the one who knows what we're doing. We're just following your lead. Let's begin in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, good and gracious God, for all of our saints who we celebrate yesterday and for all the souls that we celebrate today. Help us always to remember how large our church is, not just those who are here on earth, but those who have gone before us. And thank you for their continued prayers for us. And help us to remember to continue to pray for those in purgatory and still fighting the good fight here on earth. Help us in our discussion today as we have a very interesting topic with all the things coming up in November. And please bless your church here on earth. In your name we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. And I think we're going to have the kids go out. Yeah. I was told to have this on so that people could see it and whatnot later, but how are you guys doing? Good? Crazy week too? I mean, we just had Halloween and we get to celebrate, All Saints Day yesterday and have All Souls Day today and got all this stuff running around. Doing good? Good. I am crazy. This is my last thing for this week before I have my craziness because I had to get ready for this. I have Mass right after this, and then I am sprinting off to try to catch the bus before the band takes off for state. So the band's playing at state today. So just one more thing. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. So do you guys normally look at what's coming up, or is this the kickoff for all that, and that's kind of how it works? So again, I'm not as familiar with it, so I have the list of questions that they probably went through before, but I'm like, okay, this topic for this month is freedom, and I'm like, well, that's an interesting way to start it. I'm going to start it differently. I'm going to start with our conscience, but I just didn't know if anyone looked at it or checked it out yet or not. So, you know what? That is a perfect lead-in because I was trying to think of pictures. Because I guess the pictures didn't work out very well before, but I thought of some different pictures in your Braveheart scene of, yeah, so just take the first one, yeah. So I have a couple pictures of what the world kind of sees as freedom, right? George Washington crossing the Delaware, and I saw one where I found the one with Lady Liberty and the guys coming across. And what does that kind of feel like to you? What do you think about when you see those kinds of pictures? Of how the world kind of sees freedom. Anything with those kind of pictures? You mentioned Braveheart, so it's like charge. Mm-hmm. Right, we definitely have choices with the freedom. I mean, I think of how difficult it was for George Washington crossing the Delaware. I'm sure it didn't look anything like that. I'm sure they were all shivering and they weren't holding something. Another picture I thought of was Iwo Jima when planting the flag and how hard that was to take, the islands, 2 hard days of fighting, but to get that. But what's interesting is, even thinking about all of these pictures of freedom, it doesn't really capture, all of it, but there's always a struggle with it. There's always some kind of struggle that goes along with that freedom, which is always interesting when you look at that. I just wanted to kind of start there, and how I like to kind of go through things is I could stand up here and talk or sit down and talk, but ultimately, if we don't converse back and forth, it's going to be really boring, and you're just going to be like, Deacon Nick, please get done so I can get back over there. So I start off with questions, and this is how I kind of go through and figure out, okay, what do we need to get out of this, or what's the important parts as we go through it and stuff. So everything for these kind of come down to me about forming your conscience. Okay, so coming down to freedom, it's like, okay, Deacon Nick, where are you going to go with conscience? But your conscience, how do you form your conscience, and why is it important? Is your conscience that little, cricket, Jiminy's jumping around with you, right? It's like someone's on your shoulder just telling you what to do. You guys ever think about where your conscience comes from? How do you form your conscience? Why is it important? Your experience definitely helps form your conscience. It's really interesting for me because, going through school and stuff, it's like, well, what's your conscience? Well, you always act in the way that you see is best going forward. So you don't make a decision saying, this is a bad decision, I'm going to do this. People don't do that. They think when they make a decision, this is what I want to do. This is good for me. So you think about a lot of the decisions that we make constantly all day long. It's like, okay, am I going to make it to the next thing in time? How am I going to be prepared for right now? Is the kids going to be ready for school? Are we getting this around or that around? That's all those decisions we make. We make a decision in the way that we think is best for us or for someone else. And so that is your conscience. Your conscience is telling you, this is what I think is best. And so getting back to the experiences, we make decisions and then find out, man, that wasn't the best for me. Right? It's like, that was a really dumb decision. I don't want to do that again. Okay? At the time, we thought that was the great thing to do. We thought that was going to be for our best interest, and it's like, man, that was a really bad decision. How do I fix that going forward? How am I going to keep from making those bad decisions going forward? And so that's when we start to contemplate and think about, why was that decision bad? What caused me to make that decision? Where did I get my information from? Who influenced me? What was I thinking at the time to make me go down the wrong path? Because ultimately, we all want happiness. That's what we're all shooting for. That's why we make a decision, is we want some kind of happiness. We want it to be good. And so forming your conscience, and why it's important to form your conscience, is because we want to make those good decisions. We want to go the correct way. And so that's what forming our conscience is. We don't know every question that we're ever going to be asked. So how do we make the right choice when we get to those questions? How do we always aim for the right place? So that should help us think about who shapes our conscience, and how do we shape that conscience? Anything we do that helps us make good decisions going forward? Anything you do before you make a decision? It's going to be really boring.
There are a lot of things, but
Yeah.
probably mainly pray. Pray on a hard decision. It's a simple decision. You just keep praying on it. It's based on your
Right, right. Thinking back in high school, I was remembering someone saying something like, well, if you have a hard test or something, pray before it. It's like, yeah, no, prayer. God wants to be with you in all things. He wants to be with you during that stuff. Pray. Have him be on your side as you make those tough decisions. And, prayer is a huge part of forming our conscience, making sure that we're praying, talking with God. So talking with God means that we need to read the Bible. That's the easiest, best way to start to hear his word come alive for us. And that's amazing for me always when you read the Bible, and it's like you might read the same passage 1,000 times, but the 1,001st time you read it, it's like, wow, that really pertained to today. It really pertained to me right now and here. The clergy needs to say the Liturgy of the Hours morning and evening every day, and it's a cycle. Like every week it almost repeats, and then it's a 4-week cycle. So basically you hear the exact same things 2-3 times a month repeated over and over and over again. And it's really amazing how you hear these prayers, you say these prayers over and over, and then it's just like, this is what's happening to me right now, Lord. Thank you for helping me in this. And you feel that communication, that talking back and forth with God through that prayer, through reading the scriptures. Another way that we help shape our conscience is with the sacraments, receiving the sacraments. You guys are here, you're going to go to communion today. We know we're here for church, right? We're focused on that. But are we receiving the sacrament as fully as we can? Are we going to confession? If God is trying to give us all these graces and all these blessings, and we block him, then we're not receiving the gift fully. So confession is always good to think about during, those times of struggle. And it's like, man, things just aren't going well. I'm just, dry in my prayer life. Or why is things just kind of happening off? It's like confession is a great way to allow the graces to flow that God is trying to bestow on you. He wants you to receive those, but we block him by our sin. We block him by holding him off with those things that he didn't want us to do. And so releasing that through confession really allows those graces to flow, so you can get the sacramental graces that he wants to bestow on you. We're able to fully receive him then. So that's the first part of like, how do you form a conscience? But you think about like normal decisions you make. If it's something you've never done before, who are people you ask? I know I go ask my parents. Like, it's amazing how much smarter they got once I got a certain age. Like, they were really dumb for a while, and it's like, man, they're sure smart. I'm going to ask them for this next question. But there's people in our lives that we ask, right? Like our parents. There's coworkers. It's like, hey, you're a little farther along in your career, or how have you navigated this? Or we talk to other people, right? Like we're going through a hard time. We want to know how to do this. We want to know how to be able to make those decisions. If the kids were in here, I'd say like teachers, coaches. They're all trying to help you, grow in a specific way, right? And so that's where this is so pertinent today and yesterday, because we have the communion of saints. Okay, they are the teachers, they are the guides that went before us. They're the people that have that real world experience of how can I get through this. So reading up on the lives of the saints, or praying with the saints, asking for guidance. That's why we have patron saints. It's like, don't know why Saint Rock had this dog or whatever, but he's the patron saint of dogs, and maybe this saint can help me through being loyal, or this saint can help me through, the struggle I have with dogs. We have so many different kind of patron saints, and it's like there's something for everything going on. And they're big questions and small questions, but they're there for us. They're there to help us. And my favorite part of, thinking and praying with the saints is when we read these stories, it's like, oh, it's all rosy, right? Oh, they were just perfect. They just did everything right. It's like, no, they were not Jesus and they were not Mary. Okay, they had sinned. They sinned on this earth. They had problems. Some of them had really big sins at the beginning, and they turned their lives around. It's like, how did you do that? What did you do? So look into those saints to help us, moving forward. And that's a way to help form our conscience, bringing this back, is they're the people that went before us. And just like we have, on our walls, we have pictures of our family and our friends who, help us with our decisions. That's why we have saints on our walls. Having one of the saints there that's special to you. Thinking about, what, and they can pray right there for you, right? That's the whole purpose of, the church triumphant. So there's three parts of the church. I almost said it during our opening prayer, but I wanted to save it for here. So there's three parts of the church. You have the church militant, you have the church suffering, and you have the church triumphant. So we're the militant. We're going through the battle. Okay, we're still here on earth. We are going through the battle, and it is a battle. I know because it was a battle for me this last week. So, but it's like, how do we get through all this? I don't know, but the church suffering are those in purgatory, okay? They won the battle, but, they kind of got hurt in the battle and need to, they're suffering right now so that they can make it to the church triumphant. So that's why they need our prayers, is they're the church suffering. And then you have the church triumphant, the saints in heaven, and they're there. They made it. They're with God. And it doesn't have to be the saints that we know, by name. I know my aunt is in heaven because she suffered a lot on this earth, and there is no way that she needed to be in purgatory very long from all her suffering that she went through. So she might not be a recognized saint of the church, but I know she's in heaven praying for us. All of us right here. And asking them for those intercessions, asking them to pray for us as we go through our battle. They went through that. So just always remembering about, how do we do our basic decisions here? How do we make good decisions? We learn from our mistakes. We try to, not do them in the first place. And how do we do that? By looking at those who did it right and talking with them and talking with the saints and having them help us. That's a way to be able to make that decision the first time right. Any questions? That makes sense. I just get going sometimes. It's like, I don't give anyone a chance to interject. So I love learning from the saints. How did they act? What did they do? How can we learn from them? So this kind of gets us into, I wrote down virtue and vice, but I guess, before that, maybe we should talk about, informing our conscience. The church tells us, good things to do too, right? We have the magisterium of the church trying to direct us, and what are the church's precepts? Why are they there? You have the precepts of, Father mentioned it last week, which we don't talk about much, is you only need to receive communion once a year, okay? It's nice if you're able to receive communion more because it's the sacrament of grace, but the precept of the church is you have to have communion once a year, and usually in Easter season, because the other precept of the church is to go to confession at least once a year, typically in Lent. So if you're prepared to receive the sacrament, it all fits together. But why is that a precept of the church? Because the church knows that we sin, that we have these follies, and so that's why the precept is there, to be able to make sure that we're clean and able to receive. But the precepts of the church, listening to what your church says. Sometimes we don't always like what the church comes out and tells us, and it questions us, it challenges us. But there's a reason behind it. Jesus challenged those of his time. And it was really strange for people. It's like, how dare you say that? It's like, but he was right. We needed to change our mind. We had to change where we're coming from to be able to recognize how he was right and the status quo of the time was wrong. So the church helps guide us down that way. We need to be able to trust in the magisterium guiding us the right way when we start to go, on one side of the path or the other. So then, virtue versus vice. I love virtue versus vice because I think, in the previous time, everyone talked about virtues. Oh, this is a virtue, that's a virtue. And and to realize, how far we've come away from what is a virtue. Why don't we talk about that anymore? It's like, probably some of our kids think a virtue is being the best at some video game or whatever. It's like, is that a virtue if you're the best at that video game? That leads into conscience, because some people really think that, hey, if I'm the best at this, that's going to make me happy, and that's the virtue I'm aiming for, so that I pursue my happiness. And that's wrong. That's why we have to keep challenging that, so we know what the real virtues are. I always like talking about Aristotle actually saw every virtue as having two vices. So if you can imagine like a balance, right? So the perfect equilibrium at the middle is in the virtue, okay? So as you lean either way, you're actually tending toward a vice. So it's not like a me versus them. It's I need to stay balanced on this virtue. And so the easiest one that I usually talk about, because some of the examples for that are difficult, is courage. So the virtue of courage. So if you have the perfect virtue of courage and you're perfectly balanced, anyone who tends one way or the other, you can see that they're tending that way. So your aim is for the middle. So if you have, thinking of a battlefield, and if you have the perfect courage, someone who runs too soon is wrathful, and someone who runs too late is cowardly. Okay, so the perfect virtue of courage is knowing exactly when to go at the right time with the right amount. Okay, so that's one of the ways of balancing and seeing Aristotle's view of vice versus virtue. But that helps me too, thinking about like Mary. Mary is the queen of all virtue, and so like if we're trying to figure out how are we doing with our virtues, asking her to help us with them is a great way, because you think about her being the queen of virtue, she's perfectly balanced on every one. She's right dead center on everything. And that always helped me think too when Jesus talked about the narrow way. The rich man, had trouble getting through the eye of the needle, which is talking about going through a wall, into a kingdom. You all had to go through the eye of the needle, which meant all the rich people had to take off all the stuff from their camels or their stuff from their dromedaries, because it's only this big. Like, it made everyone take everything off to go pass through it, so that they can basically search you, right? So it's easier for us to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person, because they have to take all this load off and all these things off. But that picture of staying very small path, small way, that's balancing on that idea of virtue right in the middle. So what are good virtues to have? Our theological virtues: faith, hope, charity. Those are the theological virtues. Greatest of these is love, charity. How are we doing on those? Faith, we're coming here, but are we, presenting our faith to others? Are we, challenging the workforce? Are we, trying to lead everyone to God? Hope, I see hope as hard for people of this age too, because they're so short-timed, and so they're not looking towards the future. And so when something devastates them right away, they just like implode, or we talk about bubbles bursting, and this bubble or that bubble in the stock market. It's like everything just explodes. It's like, no, there's a hope. There's a future. We're not even destined for here. We're hoping for the future. To be with God forever. So then charity is the greatest, because when we're in heaven, we don't need faith anymore, because we'll see him. There's nothing needed to hope for, because we're at the finish line. So charity remains, love remains. Being able to help each other through just being together and loving each other. So then you have the cardinal virtues. Anyone remembers any of them, I'll be impressed, because I had to look them up too. Yeah. Yeah. You can't remember any of them? It's like, the only one that comes to me is like temperance and so justice, prudence, temperance, and fortitude. And I don't know why I always think of temperance, but prudence is my favorite of those because we talked before, it's like, how do you make a decision rightly the first time that you've never come across? That when you can do that, then you have the virtue of prudence. You just inherently know the right way to go. You just inherently know the correct decision. And so that's why it's like the top of those, because no matter what, if you have prudence, then you're just going to correctly choose the correct way, which is great. I mean, that's what we want to do. That's what we should strive for. I don't know how much time we have. I just kind of ramble on and on, so I apologize. Got enough time. I don't talk about vice very much because we don't want to aim toward the vice, but the vices, the 7 deadly sins, the 7 deadly vices, all of them have a counter to them. So if you struggle with any of the vices, it's important to think about what their counter is. So if we struggle with pride, then we need to work on our humility. So to humble ourselves instead of being so boastful, so prideful. Wrath would be patience. So if we act too quickly, we need to have more patience. And that's why I'm so wrathful, because I have no patience. It's like, that's what I want. I don't want to work on it, Lord, but you just keep giving it to me. So greed, the opposite of greed would be charity. So if we're hoarding stuff, if we want stuff, we need to be able to let it go and give it away. Okay, because this doesn't help us. Bringing it towards us doesn't help. We need to give it away. So, sloth. Sloth is an interesting one. So sloth. I think a lot of America has the vice of sloth because we're too busy. You know, people think of sloth as I just don't do anything all day. I think we have the vice of sloth because we're too busy. We don't take any time to do prayer, or we don't take any time just to be with God, or just to listen to nothing. It's the opposite vice for that we think about, again, on the pendulum. You know, so how do we combat sloth? Is diligence is what this one came up with, but it's really being dutiful to God. You know, a lot of people think of sloth in the middle of the day where it's the middle of the day, they're not doing anything, therefore they're slothful. But if you're focused on God, then you will continue down the path. You'll have fortitude. You'll be able to keep going during the hard times. The opposite of lust would be chastity. So ask for chastity if we're dealing with lustful thoughts. Gluttony, the opposite of gluttony is temperance. And gluttony is another one that you see someone super thin or someone very dainty is also gluttonous because it has to be perfect for them versus eating so much that they just want a lot. The opposite of that would be not eating enough because you're too picky. So temperance, being happy with what we have. We work on temperance a lot during Lent, where we give things up. You know, why do we give that up? Because we don't need it. We're tempering ourselves. And then envy, the opposite of envy would be kindness. So if we're envious of someone else, then we need to treat them with kindness. We need to act better for them, work towards their good. So, all right. All that being said, we finally get back to, I think, what the topic of this group was for freedom. And so, free will and freedom. So free will, why is that important? Why do we have free will? Because I mean, we think of freedom, it's like, oh, I can do whatever I want, you know, which comes from free will. So why do we have free will? Why is that important? Ever stop and think, man, Lord, why did you give me this free will? If everyone just did what you asked, it would have been so much better. Why did he do that for us? thoughts on why God would have ever given us free will in the first place? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so if God made us just to do one thing without free will, then how is that different than me making like a computer program to say, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you? Okay. Like if it made, you're a robot, you're an autonomous being where you're just programmed to do something. If you have free will, now you can choose to do the right thing, which is what I wanted you to love me. And so God gives us this great ability to come to know him and not have us be these autonomous robots just going, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Okay, it's one of my worries about AI is like, oh, we're going to have these things that think that they know something. You know, it's like, but are you giving them that freedom? It's like, well, we don't want to do that because that's scary. You're right. That was really scary that God gave us a free will to do what we wanted. How scary is that? He loved us so much that you can choose to do the right thing and love me back or to do whatever you want because I love you that much. I love you that much. I'm going to let you choose what you want to do. It's amazing. It's amazing how much love there is in that. So, and then you mentioned, human companionship. That God created us in his likeness and image and likeness, right? And so if you go back and read that, it's really interesting because he's actually talking about a community of persons at that time. We don't have the Trinity like language until like later and stuff, but the wording there is we, and he made them male and female. Came right after that. I made them in our image and likeness. I'm male and female I created them. So God is a community of persons. And that's why companionship and others are so important. You think of the greatest commandment and the second greatest commandment, love your neighbors. Why is your neighbor so important? Because we're meant to be together. We're not meant to be all by ourselves alone. God isn't alone. God is a community of persons. 3 people, 3 persons, one God. Just amazing how much that free will, pertains to all that and brings us into his relationship. So I think we kind of touched on this, but how is freedom and free will different? So we talked about it being a choice, the biggest thing is a choice. And I guess I don't want this taken out of context, so hear the whole thing out. But, we believe in choice. We just want you to make the right one. So if you think about right to life, or for life, Catholics, Christians want choice, but we want you to make the right choice. We want it to be for life. The choice has always been there, but the correct choice is life. So, and then that's where all slavery comes from. If you don't have the choice, right? You mentioned slavery. And it's like, why is slavery wrong, or where, how do you get into these, bad relationships where, one has to love the other? That is a slavery. There is no choice there. So we want to have choice, but we want to choose the correct choice. Okay, so our freedom is to choose, and our free will is to help us make the right choice. Let's make the right choice. I had another question on yours. So then, getting through that, we have how the world sees freedom. And so I passed out those pictures. And then, think about those pictures again. But then I want you to see some other pictures of freedom. Here's a different type of picture of freedom that I came up with. So I love this when I came across it, because when you have, so it's a picture of a park, right, for those who are listening or whatever later. So it's a picture of a park. But what's important about the park is there's a boundary around it. Okay, both of them have a fence all the way around it. And so we have that freedom to go in the entire playground. Okay? It's really interesting. There's a study done on parks in the United States, and 80% of the parks are not utilized if they don't have a fence. The kids stay closest to the boundary or to the equipment. The park is this big, but they stay in this spot. Why? It's inherent for us too, because this is where it's safe. This is all we know that is safe. We don't know where the end is, so we don't want to get out of that safe zone. Okay, so these places thought, oh, I'm just going to have no fence because that boxes them in, that keeps them there. I don't want that look. No, it actually made it worse for the parks. Kids didn't go to those parks, and they'd only stay on the equipment right here. They wouldn't utilize the entire park. Why? Because we want to feel safe. From young age, you can't make a kid learn that. That's just inherent in them. That's how we learn from our kids, right? It's like, why are they doing that? Maybe that's something I did. Why would that be inherent in them? So the fence is there to keep them safe, and they feel safe, and they will utilize the entire park if the fence is there. And so how does that pertain to what we kind of talked about? We don't let our kids go run out into the street. Okay, it's unsafe for them to be in the street. The world sees freedom as, oh, you can do whatever you want. It's your free will. You can do that. It's like, I'm not going to let my kid run out in that street. That's not safe. I don't care if he wants to play in the street or she wants to be in the street. I want to keep her safe. She can't play there. That is the boundary. Okay? And so the fence, you think of the fence line around the park. That's the boundary. That's how we keep it safe. And so, what are our boundaries? We kind of talked about them with the vices versus the virtues. We want to make sure we have a virtue. We have the 10 Commandments. We have the precepts of the church. We have other commandments that Jesus has taught us. The magisterium of the church set up the boundary, right? That's why we can play in the whole park, because the boundary is there. So you know how far you can go. It's very clearly defined. And so that's why people, get argumentative at the edge. It's like, well, can I go a little bit farther? No, the fence is right here. So I like those pictures, thinking about, the park and staying within our boundaries. How are we doing? I think you guys said this, how does the world see freedom? Someone said right away, with freedom comes great responsibility. Think of the Avengers, or I don't know, whatever superhero you want or whatever. It's like, wow, do they have all this power and all this freedom? It's like, well, they can use it for the right way or they can use it for the wrong way. But how much more we are superheroes for our kids, and how much more are we superheroes for, the community, trying to gather them to go the correct way. We have a great responsibility because we've been given so much freedom from our Lord. Oh yeah. So I put on your pages to think about examining your conscience. That's something that would probably be really good before church too. But just think about, at some point in time, this week or today or whatnot, they ask the clergy, I don't do a very good job of this either, but they ask the clergy every night to examine your conscience. Go through your day. Okay, what did I do right today? What did I do wrong today? Because failure to acting is just as bad as acting improperly. Was I asked to do something and I didn't do it, or did I avoid doing it? So, examining your conscience, think about, what we kind of talked about with our conscious forming it correctly. Where is it maybe ill-formed? Where don't I know enough? I've heard the virtues before, but do I need to learn them by heart, or do I need to know what they mean? Do I read the Bible enough? Just think through your conscience and how are you forming yours. And with that, has anyone seen God's Not Dead, the movie? Okay, it's really neat, and there's this one section in it. So picture this sinner he's sitting in a dark room, okay? He is the epitome of corporations, corporate greed. Think of a top corporation lawyer or whatever, sitting in this dark room, and he's talking to his mother, okay? His mother has dementia, and he's asking her, I don't even know why I'm here. His sister asked him to come be with his mom for a little bit because she's not doing very well. She's sitting in a dark room all by herself. And he says, look at you. You did everything right. You were faithful. And here you are with dementia, not understanding anything. And I am the epitome of the bad person. I did everything wrong according to you. And I have my wealth. I have my fortune. It's like, I don't even know why I'm here. And this is her response to him, as she kind of wakes up from her dementia. Sometimes the devil allows the person to live a life free from trouble because he doesn't want them turning to God. Your sin is like a jail cell, except it's all nice and comfy in there, and doesn't seem like there's any need to leave. The door's wide open. Till one day, time runs out, and the door slams shut, and suddenly, it's too late. Always gives me chills thinking about it because they set up that scene really well where she's like, and who are you? Was her next line to him. It's so true how often we think, why does this person have everything going right for them? They're not doing the right things. But how are we doing in our comfiness of our own self? There's plenty of comfort that we do ourselves in thinking about those vices versus virtues. Are we working towards the virtue of fortitude? Are we working towards getting rid of that little sin that's still holding us down? We're comfortable with where we are right now? The chilling reminder of there is a time that it all ends. It just stops, right? We are the church militant until we become the church suffering. And if we don't make the church suffering, then there's only one or two places to go. You're only going to heaven or you're going to hell. And that's why we need to be so conscious of our conscience to make sure we're making good and right choices, leading everyone to the right place. Any questions? Oh, I forgot to take that off. No, so I don't know. When I was having my random thoughts, I put down chess because I've been playing a lot of chess in my off times and just to unwind. And so on the chessboards now, when you complete a game, so if you didn't know, the computers are much smarter than people in chess. They have been since 1970 or whatever. And so they're actually rated higher. So you can actually have the computer tell you what you did right or wrong on the game. Every move, it will go through and tell you, okay, you did this. It was a perfect move. It was a good move. It was the standard move. It was a poor move, or what the heck were you thinking? Okay, like literally has like 5 levels to it, and so I don't pay for the big subscription to it. I just do the free one where you get 1 free one a day. But it'll go through every move, like not just like the whole game as a whole, but every move it will tell you, you did this one correct or not, or this is where you should have been looking, or go this way instead. This was the idea over here based on what they did to you. And so like examining your conscience, you know, it was what came to my mind about thinking about that, because it's like, it's not just how did I get to the end of the day, it's all of the little steps. Did I do each little step? Because I might have won the game, but I might have done it all wrong. Okay? And so, you know, it's each little step, how did I get there? Or did I get to the end just because I was lucky? You know, the other person made a huge blunder, is what they call it. You know, they put a double question mark. What the heck were they thinking? And then I win the game because they blundered. You know, so that's what I was thinking about, you know, personally when I was thinking about conscience. It's like, how does that kind of relate or whatever? So. Other questions? Anything? I didn't look through our faith and family. I don't know if anyone else has like gone through the questions like were in here or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'll just breeze through it, see if there's anything else that kind of stands out. So I guess you guys had an art thing before, that's why I thought of the pictures. But the art one that they thought of for freedom was actually look up Mary and the Annunciation. Okay, so like everything we just talked about, you know, think of Mary at the Annunciation. And so there's lots of different, you know, pictures of her at the Annunciation. Some show her at like a table inside, or some show her outside in a court. The one that I think I have in this picture is a very intimate one with the angel right in front of her. And what's interesting is she usually has the Bible open. It's said that she's reading the Psalms, which means she's like almost like a religious, even though they have women religious at the time, she was a religious, where she was like going through the Psalm of the day or the Psalms right then. And you know, think about, you know, freedom from that standpoint. So how is she acting perfectly with her virtue in all those ways, and how God in his free will to all of us, giving us free will, everything hinged on her answer. All creation waits in anticipation for her answer, is what I can't think of his name right off the top of my head would say. And we just all hold our breath with her, waiting for the answer. It's like the angel says, you are going to be the mother of God. She still chooses, let it be done to me according to your will. All of creation exhales as she chooses correctly in the right way at the right time with the right direction. Amazing thing about that with freedom. So, anything else? I can't find the list of questions, so that must mean that I'm not supposed to. I think that's all we got. Then we can probably go over and see how the kids are doing. So, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
When is state? When is state for the band concert?
3 o'clock
Today.
today.
Please tell them they're my prayers.
Thank you.
I've been hearing them practice.
Yeah. No, they were really excited. They had an interesting practice on Friday,
Okay.
because